Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into what is honestly one of the most incredible and, frankly, most inspiring underdog stories in the history of modern medicine. We're going to trace the journey of a scientist whose absolute, stubborn persistence through near constant rejection literally changed the world and made the medical breakthroughs of the 21st century possible. I want you to start by just putting yourself in her shoes for a second. Imagine spending decades, not months, not a couple of years, but decades, working tirelessly on a single medical idea that almost nobody around you believes in. You just know you're onto something huge, but the entire scientific community is basically rolling their eyes and looking the other way.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer weight of the systemic rejection she faced. We're talking research funding getting cut, promotions flat out denied. She was even advised by her own peers to just give up on the work entirely. I mean, honestly, under that kind of crushing professional pressure, most scientists would have packed up and moved on to a safer, more fundable project. But Katalin Karikó, she completely refused to quit. She had this unshakable belief that her research could one day transform medicine.
Section 1. The Overlooked Scientist, Katalin Karikó. So looking at her timeline, she was born in Szolnok, Hungary, back in 1955 and grew up in a small town. From a super early age, she was just absolutely obsessed with biology and the inner workings of cells. That passion naturally led her to study biochemistry, and in the 1980s, she made this massive leap, moving to the United States to continue her research. And what was her main focus? A tiny molecule that, at the time, practically nobody thought had any medical potential whatsoever. Fast forward through literally decades of quiet struggle, the 2020 pandemic hits, and then by 2023, she's standing on the world stage receiving a Nobel Prize. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 2. Messenger RNA, a biological puzzle. The molecule she was so obsessed with is messenger RNA, or mRNA. The crucial thing here is understanding how this fits into our biology. Every single cell in your body contains DNA, right? And that DNA stores all the instructions needed to build and maintain your life. But your DNA doesn't actually do all the heavy lifting itself. Instead, it sends out these temporary little copies of specific instructions to the rest of the cell. Those vital little copies, that's messenger RNA. Look at this brilliant analogy we have right here because it perfectly illustrates how this works. Think of your DNA like a massive, priceless cookbook locked safely inside a grand library. You would never risk taking that entire, irreplaceable book into a messy kitchen, right? Instead, you just make a quick photocopy of one single recipe and take that copy into the kitchen to cook. Well, that copied recipe is the mRNA. The cell uses those mRNA instructions to build proteins, which carry out pretty much all of the body's essential functions. So scientists saw this and immediately asked, well, if mRNA is just this totally natural way to send instructions, couldn't we use it as medicine? Couldn't we just write our own medical recipes and send them into the body to cure diseases? It sounds absolutely perfect in theory, but in practice, there was a massive scientific roadblock that stumped researchers for years. Section 3. Medical Breakthrough, Solving the Problem. For years, researchers kept slamming into the exact same wall, which you can see mapped out in these steps. Step 1, they'd introduce artificial mRNA into the body. Step 2, the immune system would instantly freak out, treating this artificial mRNA like a highly dangerous invader. And Step 3, instead of safely reading the instructions, the body would launch a violent inflammatory response and completely destroy the mRNA. This reaction was so severe and so immediate that many scientists just threw their hands up and said, mRNA is never going to be a practical treatment.
But Katalin Karikó simply did not accept that it was a dead end. Teaming up with immunologist Drew Weissman, she relentlessly searched for a workaround. And after years of grinding repetitive experiments, they finally found the fix. By making these really small, almost imperceptible chemical modifications to the mRNA, they could effectively camouflage it. This dramatically reduced the immune system's reaction. Suddenly, the cells weren't destroying the mRNA, they were safely reading the instructions and producing the right proteins. This was literally the breakthrough the medical world had been waiting for.
Section 4. A New Medical Era, Changing Medicine. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how this opened up a totally revolutionary approach specifically for vaccines. Traditionally, vaccines meant injecting a weakened virus or pieces of an actual virus into the body. But look at this new method. Step 1. You deliver this newly modified mRNA, carrying instructions to make just a harmless protein found on a virus. Step 2. The body's own cells read the recipe and produce that harmless protein. And step 3, the immune system sees that protein, recognizes it as foreign, and learns how to defend against it. You're basically training your body to fight the real virus if it ever shows up, all without ever being exposed to the actual danger. The true, undeniable power of this technology became incredibly obvious in the year 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic rapidly spread and brought the globe to a standstill. Researchers weren't starting from scratch. They were able to build directly on Katalin Karikó's decades of overlooked, severely underfunded mRNA research. Because of her foundational work, scientists were able to develop highly effective vaccines in absolute record time.
Section 5. Ultimate Vindication. Winning the Nobel.
Fast forward to 2023, and Katalin Karikó and her collaborator Drew Weissman were awarded the highest honor possible, the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. The Nobel Committee specifically highlighted their discoveries concerning those tiny chemical modifications of mRNA, the literal exact same research that had once been dismissed by her peers as totally unrealistic. It was the ultimate undisputed vindication.
But here is what I really want you to take away from this. Her legacy doesn't just end with COVID-19. Today, researchers are actively studying how to use mRNA for treating other infectious diseases, fighting certain types of cancers, and even potentially curing rare genetic disorders. One woman's stubborn determination to keep going spawned an entire new generation of medical treatments that are going to impact our healthcare for decades to come. We'll leave you with this thought today. The next time you see a massive medical breakthrough pop up in the news, remember the human story behind the science. Some discoveries absolutely do not happen overnight. Sometimes they begin with a single scientist who simply refuses to give up, even when nobody else believes in the idea. Because Katalin Karikó kept fighting, medicine entered a completely new era, which really makes you wonder how many other impossible ideas are out there right now, just waiting for someone brave enough to fight for them. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer, and keep learning.